And what I am going to be speaking to today is the power of love. And I just want to say that this was a demonstration of the power of love, right? In action. The commitment, the showing up, the bravery, the courage, all of that, the joy, just the burbling forth joy. And when we show up in that way, we get to share that, not only with ourselves, because you could feel how the choir was sort of energizing themselves, but they were also energizing us. So there was a gift in what it is that they were doing, but it was coming from a place of just freedom, right? Wholeness, just to sing this beautiful arrangement. So thank you, Cindy, for bringing that to us. I almost want to bottle that up and take it home with me. I'm so glad we have a recording of it, because I got to be honest, I needed that. I really, really needed that. There's so much going on in the world. And it was interesting being in France, because the Ukraine situation is so much more alive there, because the proximity is so much closer. And so the sheer volume of images that I was seeing and experiencing, the French love their news, I will say that. And there's just a lot of it. And it was heartbreaking. I kept finding my heart breaking open again and again and again. And, I left here right after Easter. And in our teaching, we teach this idea that Easter is when the Christ reveals itself as us, and I left here on this super high. Anybody else with me in that? Just completely thrown open. And I got on vacation, and has anybody else ever experienced this? Where all of a sudden, there was nothing to distract me, just me being with me for a month. Yeah, I'm glad you guys get the humor in that, because it wasn't so fun for me while it was happening. And so I wanted to talk about how we come from this place. Can you click the slide forward? Thank you. How in the midst of what's going on in the world, and it's not just what's going on in the world, right? It's what's going on here at Unity in Marin. We're in the midst of a transition. We're going to name it. We're going to call it what it is. Right? There's a lot going on for us in the midst of this transition. There's a lot going on for me just in my personal life. I feel as if I've come through 2 years of COVID, and I've shared how hard this has been for me. I'm an extrovert, if you didn't guess. And COVID was very challenging for me. And my mental health struggled. And so I feel like I'm coming out the other side of this very dark tunnel, and I'm looking around, and the territory is completely new. It's not familiar. And in that process, relationships that I've had, connections that I've had with people, all of a sudden are just reshaping themselves in different ways. And that's actually awesome, because I love the idea of evolving everything, but it's also very challenging. Because there's a lot of sadness, and there's a lot of grief, and there's a lot of, I don't know what's happening here, and I don't know if this person who was always so close and right here is actually going to remain close and right here. And who am I if I don't have that person standing close and right here? And so my heart kept breaking open again and again and again. And so I'm so grateful I had that time to not be distracting myself. But it happens when our relationships begin to shift, whether it's a relationship with yourself, whether it's a relationship with others, whether it's a relationship with the community, whether it's a relationship with the world. And in that, we can have resentment and anger and pain and hurt and loss. And that can overwhelm us. It can overwhelm our system. I found myself going into almost an emotional overload. And I would describe it as feeling, next slide, I'm just going to tell you because this doesn't seem to be working. Uncomfortable feelings, unpleasant sensations, and troublesome thoughts. Can anybody identify with that? And I had all of them. Oh, my wife fixed it for me. She's so good. She's like, you just had to turn it on, DeeAnn. Okay, so, told you, half of me is still flying over the Atlantic right now. So I had all of them going on, and I was really uncomfortable, like really, really uncomfortable. And I knew that I was caught up in it. And we get caught up in that, right? We get caught up in the anxiety and the and all of that stuff. And I realized in the midst of this sort of imploding that I was doing within myself, that I had this part of myself that was really connected into victim consciousness. That's where I was operating from. And it was like, because, victim consciousness is one of those things that once you see it, you're like, oh, duh. And then when you're not seeing it, you don't really understand that that's where you are. And in that place of victim consciousness, it's like everything is somehow against you. And, everything is always focused on the problem, right? It's always about what's going wrong, what isn't working. And it's this idea that somehow dreams are lost or dreams are interrupted, or that somehow I don't have whatever it is that I think is needed for something, whatever that might be. And it brought to mind, as soon as I began to identify this, it brought to mind the drama triangle. Now, I know I got a lot of psychologists and therapists in the room, right? So Stephen Cartman's, he created this in the 60s. And I know that Unity has a model for victim consciousness to manifestor, to channel, to the I am consciousness, but I want to throw this model in because I think it's important. I think it's okay. So we have the victim, right, which is sitting there thinking, poor me. And then we have the persecutor. So that's the person or the situation or the thing that is doing something to you when you're in victim consciousness. Now, we're not always in victim consciousness. Sometimes we're the persecutor. And when we're the persecutor, we're the ones saying, what is wrong with you? Why did you do it that way? Why don't you understand that there's another way to do it? Can we all identify with that? Our frustration, right? Navigating with people. And then there's the rescuer. And the rescuer is saying, oh, poor you. Poor you. Oh, you so don't have what you need to make it in this world, do you? Without me, you could never survive. And that space of the rescuer, I'm going to switch over, connect. That space of the rescuer, the persecutor, and the victim is something that is living inside of all of us, and we can become all three of them to ourselves. So you're in victim consciousness, and you're thinking, I'm not good enough, I could never get this done. And then all of a sudden you hear the voice going, what's wrong with you? You always screw it up. You always make mistakes. And then you hear another part of you going, now just breathe. And if we just breathe and we open up to spirit, something else will make it all okay. Can we identify with that? That's what happens within ourselves. It's how we talk to ourselves. Now, Cartman called it the drama triangle because he was very clear that this is not who we are. They are roles that we are playing. It is not who we are. It is a role that we are playing. And the idea is, how do we break free from these roles? How do we break free from this idea? Because all of this is linked to the idea that we are somehow powerless. That's what creates the drama triangle. The victim believes that they are powerless against whatever is happening in their life. The persecutor will not be powerless. Never going to be powerless. It doesn't matter who I have to step on in order to not be powerless. But I will never be powerless. And the rescuer is sort of sitting there saying, well, I'm just trying to avoid how uncomfortable I am with myself, so I'm going to focus on everybody else. I'm going to look out here and see who I can fix out here because I am afraid of what's actually happening within me. So I watched and I noticed all of those were alive in me. Woohoo! Isn't that fun to see that? And as I was sitting there, literally having like physiological response to the anxiety and the worry and the everything that was coming up for me, I said to myself, what do I believe? What do I actually believe? And the thing that came like a clarion bell is love. I believe in love. Like the power of love. That is where true power comes from. Not from lording it over somebody, not from pretending that we're not in pain. True power comes from anchoring ourselves in the understanding of love. Now, what is love? There are so many different ideas around love. When I'm talking about love, I'm talking about it from the spiritual perspective, and there's nothing wrong with any of those other kind of loves. I love them too. But I'm talking about the love that has no opposite. I am talking about the love that will never go away. I am talking about the love that is at the very center of your beingness. I am talking about the love that is the constant of the universe. That love. And when we are caught up in victim, persecutor, rescuer consciousness, we have forgotten the truth about love. But when we remember the truth about love, and we can see that love is everything and everyone. The person who you think is doing something to you, guess what? They are love. The situation that is so horrible that it just turns your stomach, guess what? Love is there. Love is there. And when we're caught up in it, oh boy, it feels like it's like across the Grand Canyon. But it is there. So I sat with that idea, and as I sat with that idea, I felt it kind of flickering. It would flicker on, and then I'd get all anxious and worried again. It would flicker back on again. And I realized that what was happening was I was starting, when it flickered on, I felt empowered. I felt powerful in a really true and clean way. And it wasn't that my hurt and my wounds and my loss and all of that like disappeared. It's not like magic. It's just that those feelings calmed and quieted enough that I could actually pay attention to something else. And as I paid attention to that something else, I realized what I was being invited into. And that was to just let it go, right? I was being invited into releasing all my attachments to what I hoped it had looked like, my attachments to what I wanted it to look like. I had to let go of the story, because that story was set up with me as the victim, or me as the rescuer, or me as the persecutor. So I had to let go of the story. And for me, the biggest thing that I had to let go of was justifying my position. I can't tell you how many hours I spent arguing in my head with the person who I am navigating this with in this moment. Conversation after conversation after conversation where I was trying to prove my point to them. Can anybody relate to that? I just was spinning. And Chris kept looking at me, and she would go, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" And she'd be like, "Look around and tell me what you see." She was so good. She was like, present moment awareness. What do you see? What's right in front of you? Stop being in your head. Stop being in the story. And as I practiced that, I noticed that something was beginning to shift within me. And I was able to truly feel the love that I am, like cellularly. I was able to feel the love between the connection between this specific person and myself. And more importantly, I was able to see the love that they are. And to understand that there was something else happening here that was so much bigger than my little story, than my little position. And what came to my mind was Lot's wife. Do you guys know Lot? Sodom and Gomorrah. It's a really nasty little story, actually, if I do say so. Particularly Lot's wife. She really gets a raw deal here, right? So the city has been decreed that it's going to be destroyed. The angels, we're behind here. There we go. The angels have said to Lot and his family, "You got to get out. You got to get out, but don't look back, right? Don't look back, but you got to get out. And they're all leaving and they're fleeing, and there's lightning bolts and destruction and everything going on behind them. And Lot's wife glances back at the city she's lived in her whole life, at the people she's known her whole life being destroyed. And in that moment, she is turned into a pillar of salt. Now, the traditional discussion around this is that she had no faith, so she was punished for not having faith. I always had a problem with that. Because to me, what I see in that story is somebody who had great compassion, somebody who was hurting, somebody who kept looking back because she couldn't let go of her attachment. She couldn't let go of the story. She couldn't let go of how that space connected into her heart. And she turned into a pillar of salt, and I realized in my life that I was Lot's wife, that in the midst of all of this COVID, that I keep looking back to pre-COVID, thinking that somehow that's still my life, and it's not. And every time I look back, the grief overwhelms me. I turn into a pillar of salt. And in that moment, I am unable to move forward. I am unable to step out into what is calling me right now. Now, in Scripture, Jesus supposedly said in Luke 22, remember Lot's wife. Those who try to make their life secure will lose it, but those who lose their life will keep it. Those who try to make their life secure, the more you try to grab onto it, the more you try to hold onto it, the more you try to reach back to the thing that was so amazing and so wonderful and so fulfilling, the more you try to reach back that way, you will lose your life. But if you allow yourself to lose the attachments, if you allow yourself to move in the flow of what is arising right now, and you actually step forward, you will find your life. I'm a living example that this is not easy, right? This is work. This is practice. This is what we step into. This is what we've said yes to. Because we are here always to be more and never less than who we truly are. So how do we hold that for ourselves? We hold it with compassion. We have to. However many times you need to look back, however many times you need to still let your heart feel connected, hold yourself in compassion. There is no punishing God here. There is no punishing God here. So if you are looking back, just know what you're doing and hold yourself in compassion and consciously work on trying to let go so that you can step forward into what is alive for you right now. With gentleness, with forgiveness, that's huge. The thing that I also realized is this piece that I talked about when I talked about grit, between the difference between excellence and perfection. Perfection is the thing that will trap you in the drama triangle. Because you're trying to achieve perfection and you don't, so then you start beating yourself up, a persecutor, and then you become the victim. Oh, I'll never do anything, right? And that linking into trying to be perfect. What if we're just doing the best we can, and that's more than enough? What if the fact that we're showing up with as much consciousness as we can, with as much compassion as we can, with as much love as we can, is actually enough? So what do we do with this? I'm going to invite everybody to actually have those difficult conversations. You know the conversation I'm talking about. The conversation with that person, the conversation with yourself, where you are being invited to a personal reckoning of love, so that you can let go of what no longer serves. And I have to say, I've been working this for a month now, And I have to say, I'm not totally there yet, but I am way clearer than I ever was before. And in that clarity, I realize that it's an opportunity to just always be willing to be wrong, willing to make a mistake, willing to apologize, willing to be brave, willing to be bold, and coming at it always from an awareness of love. And if we can do that, just think about the world we can create. If we actually can show up in love, not with judgment, not with all the story that we have. So my invitation to all of you is that you go forth today, this week. Before I do this, I want to read you a poem. Somebody sent this to me for my birthday, and I just fell in love with it. And I thought it sums up what I'm inviting us into right now. Be as water is without friction. Flow around the edges of those within your path. Surround within your ever-moving depths those who come to rest there. Enfold them while never for a moment holding on. Accept whatever distance others are moved within your flow. Be with them gently, as far as they allow your strength to take them. And fill your own being, the remaining space, when they are left behind. When dropping down life's rapids, froth and bubble into fragments if you must, knowing that the one of you now many will just as many times be one again. And when you've gone as far as you can go, quietly await your next beginning. So this is what is possible when we are anchored in the power of love. So your homework assignment, should you choose to accept it, is that to see love, it's one of the most powerful practices you could ever step into. That no matter what you're doing, no matter what's going on in your life, no matter what you're experiencing, that you are looking for love. To feel love, no matter what's going on in your life, no matter what is arising. Somebody cuts you off on the freeway, can you feel the love? Can you really feel the love? And then the peace that is the Christ consciousness is to be love. Just be it. Not something you have to think about or put your energy behind, but that you actually just allow yourself to be, because it's as easy as your breath. We just get in our own way. So let's know this with me as we affirm this for ourselves. That in all my activities, I will see love. And in all my activities, I will feel love. And in all my activities, I will be love. And so it is. Amen. I'm going to invite the choir to come on up. Thank you, everybody.